Welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about biabfar lore. Now, what is biabfar? It's a game I made called Be in a Box for a reason. In a short version, it's just called biabfar. The game contains quite literally nothing more than just a hangout game. Now, it has some elements, some AFK elements, some you can kill yourself elements, even a sword fighting thing, but aside from that, it's basically a small little hangout game I made with the help of some people. I personally think that the game has some potential to become famous eventually, but it depends on the player base and who plays it and if they understand the game and what the game has to do, blah blah blah. And I also have to offer something, and that is lore to the game, because a lot of people didn't know that biabfar has lore. It has a whole lot of lore, and one of the things I mentioned was in the lore room. Now, the lore room only exists because I need to put the lore somewhere. It's like people have to read the lore. Now, I'm gonna make this separate video because I want to talk about the origin of the stud and why the stud exists in my game. Because I have explained everything until the point of studs and what the origin of studs really is. Now, the origin is very complicated because it starts off when back then in the Cosmic Forest. If you read the original lore and the lore room lore, you know what the Cosmic Forest is. It's a big universe. Basically, it's one of the many universes in this multiverse, in this biabfar multiverse, which kind of exists, where the main box for Be in a Box for a reason just kind of got created. Now, this origin of studs has nothing to do with the main box that we all are in and we're all familiar with if you played the game, because back then that box didn't even exist. The Cosmic Force creates a lot of base plates and box-like structures to have people live there, maybe, I don't know. And there's a whole lot of gods in these worlds, in these universes, if you call them that want the best of all. Like, basically, gods would go around the planets and look for something interesting and steal from it, and basically take something from like a space plate and then put it on their base plate or on their box, depending on what it is. Gods also like to fight, at least some do. Some are just pussies and they don't fight at all. They don't really like to fight. But then again, you still have to defend yourself if you're gonna get attacked or be someone trying to raid your shit. So yeah, that's basically the gods. The gods' origin is something even further back, and the origin of gods is something completely different. And to be honest, it's not really that complicated. But when a new universe gets created, gods come with them that populate those universes and even have families and make whatever. Now, the first ever god was actually someone who still lives in the original stud era, that wanted to fight and was the strongest individual in the entire multiverse. He was the strongest because he could fight anyone and everything at the same time, and he could still win somehow. And he was super fast and incredibly strong. If he had to fight the entirety of the multiverse versus him, he would still win because of how fast he is. He dodges everything perfectly, and even if he would get hit, I don't know how you would get hit, but even if he would get hit, let's just assume his arm fell off, he could regen that in an instant, because he was the best and first god ever created. The first ever god that was in a universe that they call the Sun Universe. Now, the Sun Universe was the first to be created because everything starts with a light, and this light being the sun. Now, the Sun Universe is basically full of lava, and that's how the guy existed or started to exist. The whole universe was literally just a ball of lava, basically like the sun, and he came out of it. He was the core of the sun. Basically, that's why he's so strong, and that's why he's so fast, and basically can regen instantly. His blood is made out of lava, and that's why he is like that. Invincible, indestructible, but will he die eventually? We'll find out today in this video of lore. Welcome to the biabfar lore, and let's go through the origin of studs. Everything started back then when three gods wanted to conquer some other dude's box. But this guy was very strong, had a lot of defense on his side, so I have to create something that would help them fight that person. And in the cauldron, they put some ingredients in it, such as sun elixir, which is honestly one of the rarest things you can get because it was from originally from the Sun Universe, where also the strongest god came from. A molten piece of cheese, some god's heart, which we don't know where it originally came from, and at the end of all, an infected piece of metal. With what infection though? Well, it was basically the whole metal was infected by metal, which doesn't really make sense, but it was how it is. And they put it all in the cauldron full of acid, and then mixed it all together, and then they shake the cauldron a bit, they heated it up and did all that stuff. After they were done, something came out of it which didn't really look like what they were expecting. A stud. A simple stud. one single stud came out, and they were like, this looks interesting, let's eat it, because they originally thought they could eat some things like that. The stud originally was made for fighting and made for eating, which, you know, if you put something infected in it, which it has an infection of an infection, I don't think that's that good of an idea to eat it. But they did it either way. They split the thing in 3 parts, until someone came in, which was another god which wanted to help as well. And this very god was the 4th god. Now all these gods were just simple gods, simple fighting, had the fists, they didn't really have any powers. So they had to gain more power by, you know, eating a stud, which they didn't know could actually infect you. So they split it up in 4, and then they ate the stud. After around 30 seconds, they transformed into a stud man. A simple stud with one stud in their face, each one. Now these 4 studs didn't really have anything in mind. They weren't themselves anymore, the gods were completely consumed by studs and are now transferred into another being, which are the studs. The studs love to infect other things, such as the ingredient that was put into them. An infection of a material that was infected, of course. So they love to put their hands somewhere that would also turn everything into a stud, and that's what they always did. They always seeked for more power, and studs always wanted to be the best ones. Mainly because of the infected thing they put in there, and mainly because of the sun elixir. So there's the sun god himself, or however you want to call him, the first god. They wanted to become stronger, just like him. And because the strongest god is, well, the strongest of course of the whole multiverse at the moment, he doesn't really want to become stronger because he also wants to make a family. And so he did. He made a small little family out of a woman and himself. And they lived normally and had a normal life. But in the meantime, studs were infecting the planet, or the base plate that the 4 gods were originally on, and they infected the whole thing. Now, they noticed that there was another god watching them all, and they instantly attacked him, jumping at them, stabbing. Then moved their hand through their chest, so quickly as well. He didn't even see it coming. He just was stabbed and then saw it, how he turned into a stud as well. His powers were consumed, and now all the studs were stronger. How studs work is that they can absorb gods' powers, which faded away in time, so they cannot get stronger by consuming more gods. Because at one point studs also peak. So if studs peak, that basically means that they can't be strong anymore, because they can also infect things that easily. But yet they have not been the strongest. So they killed more gods, and then, you know, originally found the box that was owned by that one god that the 4 gods that originally existed, that were now consumed by studs, were originally gonna kill. And they attacked them, and they won with ease. A quick turn, the god jumped out of his box, looked around, and then one of the stud men instantly jumped at and stabbed him through his chest as well. But the god didn't take that as his loss. He pulled the hand out of his chest and then started fighting back, before he unfortunately turned into a stud as well. He fought the studs for a while, and then after around 10 minutes he became a stud himself. Also consuming his box, studs became bigger, more powerful. After consuming 100 gods, they have already peaked. The universe they were in, they were the strongest. And you may ask, is this the cosmic forest? No, it is not. This universe is a complete different universe. They just overtook this much universes that they also unfortunately stumbled upon the box we know and see today. Now after a whole while of consuming the entire universe, well, half of it basically, other gods have seen this and wanted to make a plan to fight them and destroy them once and for all. After around 100 years, the studs have completely consumed 50% of it and have made their own houses and fabrics and whatever, their own society, if you will. Every stud man was the same, has the same exact power, but they wanted to not leave that forever. They wanted to have some sort of superior stud man, like a stud god, if you will. So they have yet to do that. Now after 100 years, you can also think that, you know, the gods have made a plan, and they did. They created an ultimate plan that would destroy the studs once and for all eventually. They attacked all at once, over the 1000 gods that were left. They rushed at the studs and destroyed 1% of their entirety, with one strike only. The stud people instantly noticed that and jumped at the gods and killed so many in an instant. Their spread became way faster than before, and it was incredibly hard to even realize what was going on, because you couldn't see the studs really move. They just stood in one place, and as soon as they moved, it was like it just teleported. Many gods were killed. After hundreds of gods, which were all blocky men, by the way. It's like, look, this whole story is based in a Roblox game, so you could possibly think that every single god looks like a Roblox avatar. After multiple hundreds of gods died, they slowly started to see how strong the studs truly were. Even though they destroyed 25% of the studs entirety, they still didn't win. And after basically only 100 gods were left, they slowly gave up and just accepted their fate. The stud people couldn't be tired, they couldn't start tiring or giving up or anything like that. They didn't feel anything but a fighting spirit. The only thing they were originally made for is for fighting, as the 4 gods that originally made stud as a mistake said and wanted is that they just wanted to be powerful. They wanted to have a consumable which would turn them very powerful. And so they had a consumable which turned them powerful, but at what cost? Losing their consciousness, losing their personality, their what they really are, into turning powerful. But they lost everything they had, and everything that's left is just a fighting machine. Because studs were only built for fighting, the whole society thing didn't always work out. There was always a sort of corruption going in, with people having different opinions, and basically like it is today now. Just that it wasn't that severe back then. After around 500 years, they took over the entirety of that one universe. Even the sun god, or the original god, saw this and noticed that, you know, maybe they were powerful enough to be a match for him. So he instantly teleported. Yes, actually teleported, not just ran on them this time. They actually teleported to them and challenged one of the stud men. Now he was a fair man. He wouldn't just destroy the entire universe in an instant. He felt pity for everyone that was weak and wasn't on the same level as him. So he challenged one of the stud, and the stud man jumped at him, but in the sun god's eyes, they were so slow, basically not even moving. So the sun god instantly made his turn and chopped off one of the stud man's head. After that, he said that they were pathetic, not on their level, not worthy enough to be fought, and he retreated back where he originally was. The stud people took note of that, and because they wanted to be the strongest, they kept on fighting and fighting more gods in different universes and becoming more stronger by consuming the power of more gods. After a lot of universes later, some of the stud men forged together into a stud god, a huge powerful god that would decide their fate. 2 to be exact were made, and the stud gods gave them all a ranking from 10 to 1, from 10 being the weakest and 1 being the strongest. Now each time when you level up as a rank, you get 1x1 times more studs in your face. Now what does this really mean? I'm gonna explain on the screen here if I'm not just a lazy sack of shit. Basically times how much studs you can see on one side of the face. So basically, for example, so if a rank 8 has 3x3 studs on their face, then a 7 has 4x4 studs on their face. You get it? I hope so. And this also means they grow. In which way? Well, and what does that really mean? Well, basically, if you see the Stud King right now in the game, he looks like a 8, but he isn't really an 8, he's just in a small form because, well, you're gonna see later in the story, so let's continue. Anyways, most of the stud people were always a 1 because 1s were the strongest and most reliable ones. 1s became stronger always because they always consumed gods. And 10s are just kind of civilians. They don't really do anything besides fight eventually if there's a weak god that would pity them, and then they would become angry and just kill them because they were pitying them. Civilians even have some sort of power, and they can still kill a god. So with this in mind, you can imagine how strong and huge a 1 must be. After a very long time, around 1,000,000 years, they lost the ability to consume gods because of time. The time ran out to consume gods, and after 1,000 consumed universes, the sun god again took notice of it. After creating a whole family, and after around 1,000,000 years that passed, the sun god wanted to fight again. Because he hasn't fought in a while, he might as well try them. And after all the rankings came out, and even kind of came to him because it wasn't a newspaper that studs originally actually have a ranking now. So what he did was challenge a 1 to a battle. Now this time, the 1 actually moved in the sun god's eyes. In slow motion, of course, but at least he moved. He really liked how they improved in fighting and how they became way stronger than they were before. But yet again, the Sun God takes his turn and strikes and destroys the one's head. Even though he is so huge, he still managed to cut off his head with just his hand. But what happens is that he regenerates his head. This time he doesn't just fall and disintegrate. He actually regenerates his head. It takes him around a whole minute, but he overcomes something he would usually die from. The one continues fighting, the Sun God. The Sun God just strikes his head over and over again until he says, "You're in war for your opponent, but I want you to be able to hit me as well, so see you in a million years." And he teleported back into his house with his family. And after this encounter, after another million years, another 1,000 universes were consumed by the studs. The studs decided to make a certain individual called the Stud King. The two stud gods decided together that it's time to make someone more powerful and someone who has more responsibility than any of the stud gods. Someone who could destroy studs at his wit, so they made him. They made a puddle for him, and it took the Stud King 1 billion years to be created. In this whole time, the studs have consumed around a million universes and had around 100,000 wars with different groups of gods. They always won, so no worries. The studs have been undefeated for quite a while. And after so many consumed universes, so much society has grown, and then also so much corruption. Not that the stud gods are necessarily that bad, but stud civilians always protested that the stud gods were bad, even though they were stud themselves, and the only thing the stud gods did is do the best for their civilians. Also, a stud puddle is nothing else than a spawner for basically a stud person. You can't really see a puddle if it's spawned inside of a stud. Like, let's just say, I don't know, there's a puddle inside a wall that was already studified, so you wouldn't even see that there's a puddle there because it's, well, already stuck. So it would just look like someone's going out of the wall without anything else. But there were around 10,000 stud people at the time, which doesn't seem that much because, well, think of how much universe they have come and how big their society must have been, or their buildings, or whatever you want to call it. It looked beautiful, really magical place, but also so gray in one tone. A lot of smoke was everywhere because of the constant things they did in their houses. 8 studs, they were studs, they didn't do anything else but just live their life like a normal person. Just that everything involving in their life is a stud, because they don't like anything else that's not stud-like. Let's just say, I don't know, there's a patch of grass inside your house, inside your stud house. It would basically be a parasite. They even have stud spray, which is just a fucking block of studs which they throw at the thing. Like, that's not even spray, you just throw the brick at it, and boom, it becomes a stud as well. Seeing a stud person is very rare in the stud society because, well, most people lived in the main centrum, and anything outside of the main centrum wasn't really like that. The only people that lived there were maybe out of the ordinary stud people who didn't really want social interaction. Anyways, while that was happening and all that shit was spreading and the studs were just becoming way bigger, the stud gods made a second puddle. Of course, a Stud King Jr. is what they said, because he was very, very small compared to the Stud King, so you named him Stud King Jr. But originally, they were gonna give him the powers now, because it took too long for Stud King to be created. Even in the stud god's eyes, a billion years is quite a lot of time. Now, if you don't really get it, well, basically, if they blink, that's basically 1,000 years for them. Now, that's not really the case, it's just an over-exaggeration, but basically, 1,000 years is like a minute to them, because they have another sense of time, when nothing special is happening, but they just doing their usual stuff, like overtaking universes. Now, a million years is some time. It's around a month for them. And 1 billion years, well, that's around, not 1,000 months, but definitely around 10 years for a human eye. But then again, biabfar's multiverse has a different time management. And after both were about to be created, Stud King Jr. came out 1 year before the Stud King was finished. And now, they reconsidered and gave the Stud King they were originally gonna give him, because it's just 1 year. They have to wait until the Stud King is finished. After Stud King has been created, a bang heard across the whole multiverse. It was very alarming, and even the Sun God was alarmed that something powerful was created. The Stud King had such an aura, couldn't even imagine. The Stud Gods instantly gave him all the powers, all the priorities, and 25 years after he got all that, he decided to consume the Stud Gods to become the most powerful individual in the whole multiverse. Now he was aware that the Sun God existed, now that's why he told the ones to go kill him. Well, actually, what he really said is that they should kill his family, and so they did. Or, well, the Sun God was actually saying that he was gonna go and look what this Big Bang was all about, because he was alarmed of it. After going out of his house, he saw how big the studs have become, and he saw the Stud King looking at him directly in the face. Now he instantly gone there and confronted him, basically saying, "I challenge you to a duel, may the stronger win." And so he agreed. He took out his weapon, which looks like an orb collector, or a trident, or whatever you want to call it. But basically, if you're in the biabfar game and you go up to the stud area, you probably saw something like orb collector type thing, which has like 3 orbs on it, and that's basically a weapon he has. Now, a Stud King is the biggest stud of all, even bigger than the Stud Gods when they still existed, until the Stud King, consumed them. While the Sun God was busy confronting the Stud King about a duel, the one got gone ahead and killed his family, 1 wife and his 2 kids. I didn't really notice until 10 minutes later when he had an auto alarm on his house, which basically told him that his family died. But before that even happened, the Stud King and the Sun God came into a duel. The Stud King, in even the Sun God's eyes, was surprisingly fast, not even slow motion. It's just like when someone punches you in real life, but it's at least slowed down by 2. Now that is surprisingly fast, even in the Sun God's eyes. Now what the Sun God did is eventually took his strike, but before even noticing, the Sun God lost his leg. Apparently the Stud King could summon little stud tentacles out of his body, which would rip apart an opponent's limbs, or an opponent's body. That is no good news for the Sun God, so he regenerated his leg and tried to take another strike. He smacked off the Stud King's head, or attempted to at least, and didn't even do it. The Stud King is so strong, he literally survived a punch, a full power hit from the Sun God himself, the strongest god in the multiverse. Think about it. The Stud King still fell back a bit, surprised on the strength that the Sun God had. Now these are 2 minutes in the fight, and the Sun God lost his limbs multiple times and regenerated multiple times, and kept on hitting the Stud King. Now he actually managed to rip off one of the Stud King's arms, but he instantly regenerated it like it was nothing. Basically the same regeneration speed that the Sun God has, maybe even a bit faster. After realizing, the Sun God knew that punch strong enough to punch off his head and then destroy his body. Now that's gonna be very hard because the Stud King is huge, bigger than anyone or any god has been ever before. But what the Stud King didn't expect the Sun God to have is a true form. So the Sun God, 5 minutes in the fight, activated his true form, becoming 50 times the size it was originally. So now, basically being as big as the Stud King's palm. And after fighting a bit, the Sun God makes a really powerful punch against the Stud King's chin, almost decapitating him. While he was almost decapitated, the Sun God made his fastest move and cut off the Stud King's limbs. In an instant, basically. And even damaged his chest by a bit. Stud King, being almost defeated, regenerated his right arm to grab his weapon again, and then gave the Sun God a very powerful strike in the face with his entire weapon. Now this hurt the Sun God a bit, but he didn't give up because, yet again, he's the strongest motherfucker in the entire multiverse, so think about it. Just regenerating his entire fucking face, just like that, it's just kind of simple for him in his true form. But yeah, they fight a bit longer until he was notified about his family. Now this really made him think for a bit, mid-fight, so he was just a bit stuck in his mind for a while, so just enough that the Stud King could give him one of the most strongest attacks Stud King has prepared. He even took like around a whole second to charge that attack, and that's a long time in a fight. This attack gone against the torso of the Sun God and damaged him by so much that he didn't see a point in fighting anymore and instead just self-destructed. With this self-destruct, he made the biggest boom in the whole ass universe. Everyone could even hear that. It was more infuriating than the Stud King's appearance. What he did is activate self-destruct mode, and the next time the Stud King would punch him, he would explode. But instead, the Stud King noticed that he had activated the self-destructing mode and ran away instead, in full speed. Now, he decided to make an attack against himself and did so. Then he exploded and took away 55% of the entirety of the stud universe, or however you want to call it. Basically of the stud's entirety, killing around over 10,000 stud people because the main area where all the studs lived was fucked. So the only thing remaining was really just 3 ones, a few civilians, and around 1-3. The Stud King noticed that he probably can't really fight anymore because he also was hit during this explosion. And this damaged him so much that even till this point, after 25 billion years, he's still severely damaged and hasn't really found a place to regenerate properly. Every single time when he tried to go somewhere, he would be attacked by someone because the box wasn't secure enough or the base plate wasn't. He always took his warriors with him and made some warriors along the way, mostly 9s. His 1s died during one battle and the 3 still fought along the side for a while. It didn't really look good for the Stud King, and he even consumed everything that was left after the Sun God's explosion. After a long time of still fighting and doing wars, he eventually found the box, which was the box that he is in currently. And that is the be in the box for a reason box. The secret box at least. With all his warriors basically dead, only a 1 single 9 left and literally just 3 civilians, he decided to hide in this box. It was secure enough so no one else could go in there if some of his civilians and his warriors made sure that no one else would be able to come in. Because there was only one spot where someone could actually come inside. So after all this fighting and shit like that, the Stud King could finally come to rest, eating various materials in his lifespan of living in there because he just needs some power back. So he sucks the power out of other materials that would be stronger than him to regain his powers. Now, currently he's not the strongest. He has the power of a 6, but is disguising himself as an 8 so that people won't really expect him to be that powerful. But then can release inner shit and eventually kill the god that was trying to attack him. Now, he is currently in his battle form. If you look in the game right now, he has abs, stud abs. By the way, if you're one of these motherfuckers that complain that the abs look fake as fuck, or that they look shit, make abs yourself, literally. I'm about to cry, you know? And they make it stud-like, and make it fit. Exactly, that's what I thought. I don't think you can do that better. And not making them round either, because that's just dumb. Anyways, back to the lore. The Stud King made his own house he lives in now, with a closet of some materials in them, just so he can eat and, you know, regain his power. And he also made some of the studs spread outside in a forest, which he didn't take inspiration from any other forest. He lives in a cosmic forest for sure. But remember, he hates everything else that isn't stud-like. So also expect to hate the things that were originally what we call stud trees, or grass, or whatever the hell is in that forest. He made his own language over time, and now they're speaking the stud language. We don't really understand, so we just simply call them stud trees, stud chains, stud grass, and stud stones. And stud people, of course. Even though it really isn't the name of that, it is what it is. Now, Stud King remade his weapon a bit and put some orbs on them that weren't stud orbs, so he could just, you know, be a bit more powerful. Because he himself isn't really capable of fighting or making stud orbs because he's just weak right now. He even considers himself weak because of the power he used to have, being able to fight something as strong as the Sun God. And you know, to be honest, if the Sun God didn't self-destruct, he would have probably fucked up the Stud King a lot. But since he self-destructed, even destroying the Stud King's weapon because he just ran away without his weapon because it just, you know, less weight, well, he has to recreate everything he really made. But, you know, it also is something, a bit of karma he had because he literally just devoured his mom and dad basically by just killing the stud gods and consuming them. So now he has to also learn what it means to be a true stud dictator. Woo! That was quite the story now, was it? I know. There's still some honorable mentions like that the Stud King doesn't actually like Stud King Jr. for some reasons. I mean, because the Stud King Jr. is so still beefing around with the Stud King. That's why he doesn't really like him. But he can't really destroy him as well, because he's the only thing that is a stud, but he cannot destroy. Why is unknown, but you know, one thing is for sure: if the Stud King attacks Stud King Jr., he definitely kill him and probably just one hit. Now, why doesn't he do it if he doesn't like him? Well, basically because he needs him. For what exactly? Because he has at least some power to still defend him in some way. Even if Stud King Jr. would turn against him one day, he could at least consume him finally. But for now, they're still on the same side, and they still fight on the same side. And yes, that was also one of the warriors that fought along Stud King for basically 25 billion years. Even though he didn't really like, because he basically took his powers, you know. I mean, if you're like promised good, like really overpowered powers, and then you have this guy just kind of existing because of how he was created, the big bang he made, it's kind of frustrating. But either way, you know, they're both studs. They have to fight the same side because they both don't like anything that is not stud-like. So they have basically everything in common that they possibly can, just that they don't like each other. Now, one thing is still not really known if the Stud King is a good dictator or not. Like, if he's a good Stud King, if he's good for his civilians or not. It doesn't seem like it, because he doesn't seem to care about his civilians. He only cares about the warriors he has. Because every time a civilian gets like attacked and he even sees that they're about to die, he doesn't really give a shit. In all the wars that happen and shit like that, he himself doesn't really care. Or doesn't really seem to care, at least. Now, what he idly really wants is just peace, to be honest. He doesn't really want anyone else to disturb him anymore. It was enough that he lost most of his power. He wants to at least chill now. He wants to sit back and relax. But he can't do that because he was born to be a fighter and to just be a warrior and to have a fighting spirit. Studs don't get tired ever. They don't feel pain, really. The only time they feel pain is when you're like, I don't know, when you're like a civilian or like a 9 or like an 8 maybe. But everything above is like, you don't really feel pain because you can just regen that. Also, every stud is defeatable by having their head cut off, unless if you're 0, 1, 2, or 3. For this, you need some special shit that, you know, you can kill someone like that powerful. Now, Stud King is actually the 0 here, if you want to call it that, because he's the most powerful of all of them. So even if you would create a 1, he would still be more powerful. Not in power, but because Stud King can just snap, he is gone. Because he still has that power to remove studs at his like, or studs like he wants to. But yeah, his little orb collector thing can also control time. This is why the fire in the thing actually doesn't move as fast, because he's trying to control the whole time of the cosmic forest universe to, you know, consume multiple universes, to, you know, consume multiple base plates, boxes, and shit like that, to, you know, gain more power and regain his things and regain his kingdom and whatever, you know. But that's not gonna work because I am also in that game, and I also play a big role in that, because I was the one that found the box and that basically is the owner of the box. And the box is very special because it creates its own secrets, and it's basically the most powerful box ever created. So I train to be more powerful than the Stud King because I know he exists, and I know he's bad and evil and all that shit. And I also know how to control time, so he's not gonna control the entire universe or whatever, because I know how to keep it in a barrier. He might control the time around like his room or anything or everything like that, but his orb thing won't be more powerful than that. By just controlling the very room he's in and the power and the physics and whatever. Now, I'm not better or stronger than the Stud King as of right now. I still have a lot of training to do in the lore to be more powerful than the Stud King, so maybe one day I'll overcome his power, but I don't think so. Thank you guys for watching, like, a lot. I know this video is like very long and it's detailed as well, but I was trying my best to make a lore that was somewhat interesting. Maybe, you know, you are a stud fan now. Maybe you like the studs now because of their origin and whatever the fuck. But as a Stud King, you know, you still have to think he's the most powerful individual in the whole multiverse now, because the Sun God died. But the Sun God that isn't as strongest one, because every single other god is basically on the same level. Besides some, they're still stronger, but overall, the Stud King is still the strongest one in the universe right now, even though he's not as strong as he used to be. Even though he just has the power of a 6. Think about it. That was the lore for now. I'm gonna, you know, do some more lore stuff maybe one day when I add more stuff into my game, but that's really the lore behind the origin of the stud. I really do hope you enjoyed it. I just said it before, but you know, it's, oh my god, man. You don't even know how much thinking I had to do to think of this goddamn story. It's so much thinking for no fucking reason. Like, this video is probably not even gonna get that much views out of the way and not much recommendation or whatever, because simply that my channel doesn't really do that well. I mean, I don't really care, you know. Again, it's just for fun and for friends. But then again, you know, I wish this would at least get a bit more attention, so, you know, my game gets a bit more popular and whatever. And also, I wanted to quickly mention something, because at the end of the video, or at the start of the video, I always tell you guys something about, like, my life and whatever. Basically, how I'm doing right now, I'm doing okay. Not really doing anything special right now, but what I would like to do is be rich. Not because I wanted to first do something for myself, and then I do something for others. Such as, like, I don't know, let's say I have 1 million Robux. What would I do for 1 million? I would definitely buy me a Dominus, my dream Dominus. It's like, I set this as my goal right now. And then I go for donations, because I love donating to basically other people, you know. It's a thing I really like to do, because I like to make someone's day. I know, it's just satisfying, but if that dream is gonna come true is really up to if the game's gonna get more popular, if I add more stuff or whatever. You know, I hope it does. I hope I get more scripters that script the shit that I want to have scripted, because I need stuff like that, because I need more things inside the game, more tweaks, whatever, because it simply makes the game better, and therefore the game will get more popular, since the game is just simply better. Now, again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Maybe it's another biabfar lore video, but we'll see. Bye bye.